Good morning. It's a delightful winter's day down here on the Mornington Peninsula. Now I've done this video a little different in that I've included the text of this in the Substack, and the video is essentially the same. So you can play it in the background if you prefer to listen to this, but I'll try and keep it as short as I possibly can. Unusual for me, I know. Our contributors this time around are our gardener, Stuart. So he's been our gardener for the past 20 years. We were one of his first customers when he started out, and we're still here today. We've watched Stuart and his wife Sharon start a family. We've helped them finance a new house build and fund some work cars, and he's been helping us around the house for all of those years. And Stuart and Sharon are far more friends than they are clients. But here they are, they're our contributors this time around. So in March last year, to give you a bit of a backstory, it was a fairly chance conversation with Stuart while we were drinking coffee in the backyard. And that conversation led him and his wife Sharon down a path that I believe has laid the groundwork for their financial future. And that conversation was, of course, about self-managed superannuation funds. Now, they didn't believe for a moment that they could do that. He and Sharon didn't think they were in a position to do anything with their super funds. Collectively, they had somewhere around $230,000, and they were contributing somewhere between maybe $8,000 or $9,000 a year into two separate retail funds. Now, after speaking to the professionals that we use, they helped them establish a new self-managed super fund. And we helped them buy a property up on the Sunshine Coast inside that fund. And with their permission, which I've obtained, I'm going to explain how they did that, what the costs involved are, and more importantly, how it's expected to play out over the next 17 years, which is the time frame that they've got until they get to a point where they can retire or will retire. And I'm going to compare that to some industry super results, and you might want to stick around for that because you won't believe the results. I actually checked them twice before I put them on here. So let me give you some background. Obviously, Stuart's self-employed gardener. Sharon's been a part-time cook, but very recently she's just started a full-time position with a not-for-profit. And their starting point for super was two funds, one of $134,000 and one of $96,000. So combined, they had around the $230,000 mark, and again, contributions of somewhere between $6,000 and perhaps $8,000 a year between them. Now, the projected outcome of that, if they remained with their industry fund, and I've used the asset calculator for this, and I've included the increase in Sharon's employment, in her employer contributions. And in 17 years, according to ASIC, they would have accumulated $626,000. I have to tell you, that's actually a pretty poor result compared to what they'll achieve for themselves. So the strategy behind an SMSF is actually quite simple. So the first thing is you buy a property inside the fund, where the income from all sources, that is from rent, your employer contributions, or if you're self-employed, your own contributions, or even additional contributions, exceed the interest and expenses on the property. And that includes obviously the interest on the loan. And that's the balancing act to get all of this right. And we need generally to keep the LVR, the loan to value ratio, as low as possible, so that the excess funds can be used to repay the loan faster. Now, the property that they bought was $499,000. That was in a development called Nura, which I've got playing in the background. And we established a loan inside the fund to purchase that property for $290,000. Now, in this case, the figures work as follows, and these aren't guesses, these are actual numbers, and I will try to add them into the text of the video as well, but they'll be in the Substack. So on the income side, they have rent of $25,000 per annum, and that's net of fees. They have personal contributions of around $16,000, which will rise, which is a total of $41,000. And on the expense side, they've obviously got loan repayments, which are currently $22,000, and we expect to see those fall. and fees such as body corporate maintenance and self-managed super fund fees of around $6,000. Now the super fund fees rarely go above $1,500 per annum, and all of that totals around 28 grand. So there's a surplus of $13,000 a year. And I calculated using our trusty little 10B calculator that the repayment time frame on that's around 12 years, assuming that there's no changes in rates, which there will be. And at 12 years, they'd own the property outright. Now with Sharon going full-time, her employer contributions will rise, and in Stuart's own words, he has a far greater incentive to contribute to super because the benefit, i.e. the property, is much more tangible than shares. And their personal contributions will rise, and again, I've worked off around $18,000 per annum. So that means that they'll own this property outright in around 9 years. And we estimated the rent in 9 years based on standard industry increases at $36,000. And if I hold their contributions at the $18,000 level, that means that they're contributing into their super around 54 grand, which is all going into the superannuation fund. So the way we're using the estimate here is that over a 17-year time frame, and that's until Sharon retires. Stuart's just going to have to keep working for a few years because he's a couple of years older. In this time frame, the property loan is going to be paid out in 9 years. And that leaves around 8 years at depositing of $54,000 a year. And again, I've just used the asset calculator to do this, which is freely available. It's nothing fancy, but $54,000 going into super each year, taxed with compounding interest over that 8-year period. We would expect them to accumulate cash of around $438,000 and some change. And again, that's according to ASIC. So we estimate that the cash from the sale of a property in 17 years would be around 1.1 million. And I think we're being pretty conservative on that. That's 17 years, and that's net of taxes and fees. And again, I feel we're being conservative, but I'd rather err on the side of caution. So at that point, the total retirement fund would be around $1,538,000 and some change. That's an increase from $230,000 today to $1.53 million in 17 years. And that's outperforming all industry super funds by a staggering 245%. And this is the key to it. This is how the picture plays out for them at a later stage. So at retirement, they'll own their own home. They'll have roughly $1.5 million in cash in the bank. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that if that was invested even at a very conservative 6%, it will return $93,000 a year in interest. Plus, under the superannuation rules, they actually have to draw down 4% of the principal, that's the 1.5 million, every year. Now that's another $61,000. We'll round it out at 60. So this gives them an income each year of over $150,000. Now yes, you've got to take tax out of that, but that's a pretty livable expense. Their unencumbered home that they're living in now is going to be estimated at somewhere around 1.5 million, and that can be downsized in the future as well. It's almost 2.5 times what they could do with a retail fund. And I know I keep saying this, that you need to get the hell out of industry super, but you do. Stuart and Sharon's fund will outperform industry funds by almost 250%. That is a gobsmacking $900,000. And yet there are people that will watch this and they're saying, yeah, but. Well, but what? You watch these, these idiot ads showing how you can save an extra few $1,000s by swapping from one industry fund to another industry fund. What they don't tell you is they don't tell you about the fees that they're stripping out. So a simple check, the Australian Superannuation 2024 annual report. You can look this up, it's online. Their administration costs to run that fund are $564 million. That was at the end of 2024. Just let that sink in. That's more than $500 million to administer a fund. But the title of the top paid CEO in 2023-24 went to UniSuper's John Pearce. He had a remuneration package of 1.88 million. But he was ahead of Aware Super, Damien Graham, who he only earned 1.76 million. Commonwealth Superannuation, she pocketed 1.63 million. For what? That's your money. And we have helped dozens and dozens and dozens of people now acquire property in their funds. We've got access to brilliant financial advisors, superb accountants and lawyers who do all of the work in the background. And yes, it is a lengthy process, but the sooner that you start, the sooner you get out from these thieving funds. And I've deliberately kept the word bastards there. Oh, there it is. So for your own sake, I'd really like you to start now. You have my email address, email me and ask me this question, can we do this? And I promise you, I'll help. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you got some information out of this, and we'll see you next time around.